And we're back here live at the general election count here for 2024 in Carlow, Kilkenny, and I'm pleased to be joined by the new, relatively still new MEP for Ireland Southwest, or sorry,
South.
Ireland South. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Kathleen Funchion. Was Kathleen first. The election here, of course, you had to resign your seat as you were elected to Europe. You're running two candidates. It looks like between the two candidates that you will retain your seat.
Yeah, so I'm delighted with that. Obviously, it's based on tallies, but although we were a long time waiting for the tally results in Carlow Kilkenny here, which was unusual because we normally have a very good, efficient operation. But look, I do think it looks like we will hold the seat, and potentially be in the hunt maybe for that last seat, because I think it's hard to know where the last seat's going to go. I don't think I agree with the analysis that there could be three Fianna Fáil seats just based on where everyone is standing at the moment, and everyone needs to reach the quota. So it's going to be interesting, and I think a long few days potentially.
Absolutely, and you're now an MEP. I suppose is it a big change from being a TD as regards to the schedule? And of course, you're between here and Brussels and Strasbourg a good bit now, I imagine.
Yeah, so it was a big change in terms of even logistically. You're looking at 700 plus MEPs, so it's a much bigger parliament. I would do find that there is maybe it's quite constructive in terms of like the work and the policy, and you really do get an opportunity to work on policy. And that is where potentially changes can be made. So I'm really enjoying that element of it. And the committee work, it's a little bit different than the Dáil, and that's kind of where a lot of the work is done. There's also, I feel anyway, a lot of times where the 14 Irish MEPs come together on issues, which is a bit of a change than you would see in the Dáil. So yeah, a big change, but enjoying it so far. And obviously then there's 10 counties in Ireland South. I did manage to get to all 10 counties during this election campaign, and really do want to take that part of the road seriously in terms of representing Ireland South, because I think a lot of people are totally disconnected from Europe. That came up a lot during the campaign. People feel like you swan off to Europe and they never see you. So I'm going to try my best to be visible and make it relevant.
And when you think about it, did I read a stat somewhere that was over 75 or 80% of our laws actually originate in Europe? So we should really be paying more attention to what is actually going on in the European Parliament, because the laws that they're passing have a big impact on our lives here in Ireland, whether we realise it or not.
Yeah. So 70% of the legislation, you're right, originates in Europe, and I think when you're there, you really see actually that is the case, and it is important that we have people looking at it and challenging, obviously welcoming things where they're good, but I think it's really important, given that we are a smaller nation, that we are fighting for absolutely everything in terms of the benefits that we can have from Europe. I did feel like Europe, originally was kind of a community, like a lot of our good workers' rights and our gender equality legislation came from Europe. In the last little while, there's a lot more of a drive around militarisation, and I think it's really important that we make sure that Europe goes back to kind of the social aspects and looking at, disability services, for example. What role can Europe play in relation to housing? Because that's a crisis everywhere.
There's now a EU Commissioner for Housing, which is a great development.
Yeah. So we need to look at one of the committees I'm on. It's called EMPL, because all of the committees have like French names. So housing actually falls to that. It's obviously workers' rights and disability as well. But I do think that they're important issues, and hopefully as well people will see the relevance and the benefits then through that as well.
Absolutely. And my last question before I hand you over to my colleague, my esteemed colleague, Paidi Manning. You've been very vocal, along with Maria Walsh, on the situation that is affecting our Irish fishermen, particularly around Norwegian trawlers coming in overfishing of mackerel. We've had Patrick Murphy on our programme here, the Irish Political Roundup, from the Ireland Southwest fisher producer, and it's when you listen to Patrick and when you hear the situation that the Irish fisheries are in, given the fact that the quotas that they have, it's very, very lopsided as regards what Irish fishermen can get versus the quotas they have to work with.
Yeah, so I think, to be fair, what the fishing community and recently the various organisations have come together, which I think is a really good idea. So they're kind of forming like an IFA of sorts that
Yeah.
they can actually work together. So strength in numbers, first of all. But they're looking for a proper review of the common fisheries policy. It makes total common sense to have that. Like during the campaign, I met a lot of the fishermen in Wexford, and their stories were really kind of stayed with me, because they were kind of grown men getting upset about how difficult their circumstances are, that the industry is dying, that they are in huge volumes of debt. These are small fishermen trying to keep the business going for families, and I think they play a key role. I think it's really important, particularly around the Norwegian fleets, that they're really strong on having banning that, and also there's so much more that could be done around the various types of fish and the quotas and how much Ireland is allowed.
Ireland has the richest fishing waters
Yeah.
in the world, and
Yeah.
it's an amazing resource on our own doorstep that we don't realise or appreciate it enough.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's important that we actually properly listen to what they're saying, and then at every opportunity raise that. Definitely, it's something that really has stayed with me since the campaign. So it was one I wanted to. I did try get onto the Fisheries Committee, but obviously you can only be on so many committees,
right, yeah.
and Sinn Féin only has 2 MEPs as well. So. But look, you can do a lot of work even if you're not on the committee, and that's our plan.
Absolutely, because if we're going to make any headway within our fishing industry, it's going to have to be European driven.
100%,
Now I'm
yeah.
going to hand you over to my colleague, Paidi Manning.
Kathleen, I have no curveballs for you, sadly,
Okay.
but the
Waiting for one.
we spoke about the European election, but tell me about the general election. I'm sure you were out canvassing for your two
Yeah.
candidates in Carlow, Kilkenny.
Yeah.
What was the reaction like on the doors?
Yeah.
And it can't have been too bad, given that the tally has 11,000 votes across the constituency.
Yeah, it was. It was really good. I feel like it gained a lot of momentum throughout the campaign as well. So maybe it was a bit slow to start in terms of engagement. But as it went on, I really feel like we did get a lot of people say they were looking for change. There was a kind of a historic Sinn Féin vote. We obviously did well in 2020. So there was people saying that they're going to continue to vote Sinn Féin. And then there was some people saying they were new voters. And it was a big ask for our two candidates, very new to it, first time running in a general election. So I think they have done brilliantly, both of them. We've yet to see what's going to happen, but I have to say I'm very proud of the two of them for the work they've put in. And, we were kind of coming from a local and European, it felt like all the elections just merged into one at some point. But yeah, I was really happy with the response that we were getting in general across both counties. And then in Ireland South as well, it was fairly positive.
You ran for the Town Council, County Council, European elections in 2009,
Yeah.
general election in 2011, locals in 2014 when you got a seat,
Yeah.
by-election, and then were elected at the general election. Like, that was a lot of hard graft and work gone in before you got
Yeah.
to the Dáil. What would you say to candidates who were unsuccessful at this election?
Yeah, so the first election I ran in actually was 2007. It was the general. No, it's okay. And my eldest child, who was nearly 18, was 3 months old exactly on the day of the count. So I have to say, a lot of it is down to sticking with it. It is down to the hard work. It is down to the hard graft. It is a really public forum to lose your job or to not be successful or to see maybe a low number of votes, and then you can't not take that personally, but you do have to give yourself the few days and then dust yourself off and keep going with it. Because if you really feel committed and passionate to whatever party that you are involved in, or if you're an independent, like if you really want to make those changes that you're kind of aligned with, let's say, the only way you're going to do it is through perseverance and hard graft. And I think, we had a really good local election here in 2014. The last two local elections haven't been great for us here in the constituency. Yes, we've made some gains, but we do need to look at that even still now. We have 5 years to try and change that. So that's something that, like, we've done well in certain things, and that's an example of where we're still learning, or we still have to do well, but you have to stick with it. It's the only way. It really is. And you see that as well. Some people who've been, running a few times and then they finally make it over. And I think there's everyone nearly, regardless of who you are, you feel happy for someone who has obviously been trying for a very long time and putting their name forward. So there's some really good, like, Social Democrats first time candidate, first time out, and that seems, based on tallies, to be a really good vote. So I would say to anyone like that, stick with it.
And if you could tell yourself back in '09 that Sinn Fein and Kilkenny would be getting 28,000 votes in 2 general elections, what would you like?
Yeah, no, I never would have believed it. So, I mean, it's kind of well known probably at this point, but I got involved with the party in 2003, never had any intention of being a candidate, and I really genuinely didn't. Um, when I was asked, I was like, no, I couldn't do it. I couldn't go on the radio. That was my big thing, that I just couldn't face the public part of it. And eventually I said, I do it. We were coming from a very low base. Chances of us getting in '07 were very slim, and we knew that. And same with '09 in terms of the European, but obviously we hope to make the breakthrough locally. And I have to say, I found the first few months being on the council difficult. I was the only Sinn Féin. I didn't have any people that had gone ahead of me, when I really relied on people being fair. So Malcolm Noonan was the mayor of that first borough council. Joe Reedy, who was here earlier, the count, was a councillor. And I relied on people like that being very good and very fair to me. And I think that's like that 5 years in the borough council. I often reference back to one of my kind of favourite times, I suppose, in politics in terms of working together with the other city councillors. I think the borough council was really good for Kilkenny City, and I think we made some really good decisions together. Like, for example, the old swimming pool, when there was a question mark over that, and then it was handed over to the Marble City Boxing Club. So, you kind of look to times like that and think it really is worth it. But you do definitely have to stick with it. And I never would have envisaged us being a TD. I never would have thought I would have been the TD and now the MEP. So, like, genuinely, anything is possible out there for someone who's determined to stay with it.
Yeah, you were very close to beating WD Cosgrave's record in 2020. You were a few.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. You were a few hundred votes off WD Cosgrave, which is insane.
Yeah.
And Sinn Féin this time out have 11,000 votes. Is that your core vote in this constituency, do you reckon? I know you can never take a vote for granted, but across 2 elections you've had a very strong level of support.
Yeah.
I would almost say consistent.
Yeah, I do think we're building up a kind of a base there, and largely as well through some of the work of our councillors, who are out there, who are putting in the hard graft, and then I suppose having the offices, having a base here locally and being able to do your best for people and tie in with groups and everything like that. So I do think we're kind of probably at the big, because I think you never really can tally a European election, but we have rough tallies for Carlow, Kilkenny, and we were held around the 24%, and now this election a little bit lower, but I do think there is a core vote there between maybe 10 and 12,000. So yeah, it's really good to see that. And I was, I suppose, quietly confident. I've been in enough count centres on enough days to never be too optimistic. I nearly feel like I'm going to jinx it if I say anything, but I was very quietly confident that we would retain the seat here. Do you know what I mean? Because I really did feel a lot of that was a core Sinn Féin vote too,
The future is bright for Sinn Féin and Kilkenny.
Yeah, definitely onwards and upwards. We'll definitely retain the seat, and then we'll go from there. And hopefully as well, we'll have people that will contest the local elections next time out as well, and now have a great profile and all of that. So, as I said, it is really about sticking with it.
You'll have to get David Kennedy back on the ticket. He was unlucky last time, but he was a great count.
David was brilliant, and I think he's hoping to come into the count maybe tomorrow. Very good councillor, and a big loss. And actually, funnily enough, we talk about the campaign and being out and about. That came up in Ballyhale when we were canvassing with Natasha. Just people say that they still feel the loss of David, and hopefully that he would consider running again.
It was recognised cross party that he was an excellent councillor.
Yeah, he was, and he worked well with people, and that's a really important element of the job as well, because a lot of the times, particularly at local level, you have to. Funny enough, that's where local and European are very similar. You have to try and work with your colleagues, because otherwise you're going to achieve nothing. So, and David was kind of well known for that. So, and I think that's an important part of it too, that sometimes people don't talk enough about in politics as well, that you have to try and it's not all about ego and all that. You do have to try and cooperate. It's the right word.
I'm going to pass you back to Paul.
Well, Kathleen, thanks a million for taking the time to talk to us here on the Irish Political Roundup, and we'll definitely have you on again into the very, very near future, particularly talking about the subject of fisheries, which we've covered extensively here on the Irish Political Roundup. So we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the count, and hopefully you'll get a seat between your two candidates.
Hopefully. Thanks very much.
Back to